Ahead and perfect. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first of a series of virtual calls that I'll be hosting for the CTE STEM plus PBL integration process. The purpose of these calls is to go a little bit deeper into some of the PBL components and the integration process itself, especially as we do start the implementation year 25-26 school year. So we know that everybody has been working hard on what those PBLs are going to look like. And as we mentioned at the July workshop during the CTE Institute, we want to make sure that all the teachers have everything that they need. So this call, the first of many that I'm going to be hosting. At the end of this call, you'll get my contact information, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask me any questions that you would like. I am recording this. These video calls will be posted to our websites. We have the new website that's going to be launching in September, so there will be links to all of this on there. But you do have me live tonight. If you have anything that you want me to know, please feel free to ask. If you have any comments that you would like to make or anything in general, then just go ahead and put that in the chat. I am screen sharing from two screens, so I can see you and I can see the slides here. So the chat isn't something that I'm going to be able to see all the time. So I'm just going to try to go back and forth to the chat. If I'm just not getting to something, then feel free to unmute yourself and just ask that quick question. So a bit formal, informal, this conversation here. Just putting that out there. What you feel comfortable about tonight. All right, so this is the first of the PBL components calls. Tonight we're going to take a look at PBL components, content focused, relevant, and then 21st century skills. So as a reminder, when we met in July, or if we met at any of the previous workshops that I've hosted, or if you've been there, uh, maybe this looks familiar. These are the six main components that we discuss when we talk about problem and project-based learning and what it looks like when you're building those lessons, those units out. We want to make sure that all six of these components are found throughout the entirety of that PBL. So as you're planning them, think of it as, is there an opportunity for this component to happen? Am I intentionally building an opportunity for students to recognize that this PBL focuses on a certain content area? Is there an opportunity for them to practice their 21st century skills? Am I leaving this PBL open-ended for students? So try to think of it that way as we go forward. So tonight, 21st century skills, content focused, and is it relevant to the students? If you're curious about when we're going to be talking about the other three, that's going to happen next week, August 26th, same time, same format. We're going to take a look at those other three components. But tonight is all about the first three that we mentioned there. Okay, as a reminder, this QR code will take you to the PBL template that we have made for the integration process. And so what I am going to do is I'm going to put the link to that in the chat here. So if you will give me just one moment, if you're not scanning the QR code, um, from your phone or any other device, I want you to make sure that you have quick access to that. So I just put that link in the chat. So if you click on that, that should take you to a Google form, or I'm sorry, a Google Doc of that PBL template. And there you'll see the same template that I shared in July. You'll see all the different PBL components can be found in that template. And that's how we're going to do this tonight. So we'll talk about a component and then I'll show you some key points and then we'll look for it within that PBL template, and then we'll discuss where or how you might connect that component into the PBL lesson. All right, first up, content focused. So when we talk about PBL being content focused, what are we really saying? Um, when we say that we want to make sure the PBL is content focused, three key points come to mind. The first, PBL is connected to the program of study standards. It's connected to your curriculum. It's connected to what you are wanting your students to know. Um, One of our facilitators at the July training made a great comment. She said, when the PBL is over and you ask your students, what did we do? If their answer sounds like the standard you were wanting to connect, then you know that you nailed it. Now, what makes that difficult is, well, what if it doesn't sound like the standard? That doesn't mean that you were wrong. That just means that there's a chance for you to refine that PBL to where it can more closely align with the standard that you are wanting to connect. The second key point is the goal of the PBL is clearly aligned to your content area. The example that I'll give is if we are in a construction class, whatever construction class that may be, if we're in that construction class and we're building something, and we're making that connection, fantastic. But if the students aren't making the connection of the project that they're doing and how it relates to that specific piece of the construction class, then there's some areas that we need to take a look at. If we are designing a specific shoe and we are looking at the goals for what that shoe needs to do, but the goals for what the shoe needs to do don't align to the program of study or to the content area that I'm teaching, then we need to go back. We need to take a look at what our goals for the PBL are. The third key is that having a PBL that's content focused allows the students to apply content knowledge in a real world context. So you've heard it at several of the workshops that we've had previously, and we're just going to reiterate the fact that we want students to be doing PBLs that are related to their content area, and then we'll get into this in a moment. But it's relevant to what they're doing or what they're seeing in their community. So we want that real world connection to be there whenever we're executing our PBLs. So making sure that PBLs are connected to the program of study standards, making sure that the goals of the PBL are clearly aligned to the content area, and then making sure that our students are applying that content knowledge to a real world context or a real world problem. We want to make sure that there's some type of connection with the content and with the community, with something that the students are actually seeing, something that students are actually doing. So if we have that template pulled up, now we're going to take a look at some areas where we would find that content focused in PBL. So I'll say this before I continue. There are multiple areas where you'll see content focused can happen or is present within the PBL template. But what I've done for the purpose of these calls is I've just intentionally highlighted a few areas. If you're looking for a starting point or if you're having trouble identifying some of those areas, I've just highlighted ones. I'm not going to use the word obvious. I'm going to say we've highlighted ones that this is where you would definitely find this PBL component. So, and if you remember, if you've seen the PBL template before, it's actually 4 pages long. So just think about this middle piece is the divider. So one, two, and then we'll see the second pages has 3 and 4 on it. But looking at the first page of that PBL, where would we see that content focused component? Right here in the standards. And again, as we look at the standards that we are connecting to the PBL, we don't have to try to connect every single one of these areas. If this is the first time that you're planning a PBL, if this is the first time that you're executing a PBL, and you don't feel comfortable connecting a math standard or an English standard to your program of study, don't do it yet. Practice the PBL with just your program of study standard. If you feel comfortable adding in one additional standard from somewhere else, then add in an additional standard. Uh, the goal is not to connect as many standards to this PBL as possible. The goal is to have your students executing a PBL that's related to the real world, that allows them to practice these skills, that does connect back to their content area. So I made the comment in July and at other previous workshops, if the standard feels like it's a reach, meaning, well, I think this standard connects, but I'm not really sure how, my suggestion is don't add it in there. Don't add it in there until you are sure how that standard connects, until you feel comfortable teaching that standard or intentionally drawing attention to that standard. Don't add it in there. You would do yourself and your students a disservice if you're trying to force that on there. A second place that we would see that the PBL is content focused would be in the daily activities. A lot of teachers say, well, if I'm doing a PBL, does that take away my daily checks? Does that take away some of those routines that I've spent a long time as a veteran teacher building? The answer to that is no. If you need the daily checks, if you have notebooks that you have the students turn into you every single day, if you have weekly quizzes, if you still have some vocabulary that the students need to know, that's all content focused and that is all fantastic. Those are definitely part of your daily activities. So we're certainly not saying take those things out, not at all. What we're saying is connect them, make them a daily activity. You can still have all of those checks. You can still have those weekly quizzes, those daily quizzes as part of the PBL. Just intentionally call them out as this is a daily activity that we're going to be doing. You might find it in this template if this box gets really long, or you might link out to your own pacing guide, just depending on what your style of planning is. All right, on the second page here, but remember this is page 3 and 4 of the actual template itself. The places that I've highlighted for content focused are in the career connections. So, how can I relate those careers? How can I relate what those students are potentially going to be doing in their work-based learning program? Um, in their job fairs and their career fairs that you're having in school. How can I relate that back to the content that this PBL is covering? So trying to make that connection is going to be helpful for making sure your PBL is content focused. It's also going to help your students understand here's why we're doing this. The CTSO connection there. We've talked about CTSOs quite a bit. The CTSO competitions that exist here, um, they have great outlines. They have curriculum aligned competitions, events. There are so many things that you can do with those CTSO connections that relate to your specific content. So, if you're familiar with what your related CTSO program is, then that is fantastic. But if you're not sure, like which CTSO aligns with my program of study, we will definitely help you find that information because there is one for every single program of study in Tennessee. So if you're interested in which one aligns with your content area, then we can definitely help you find it. And if that's something you want to ask me later, and then I need to look that information up, I am more than happy to do that. So just feel free to reach out about that. All right, so now brings me to the question, how will you make sure your PBLs are content focused? So what I've got is a spreadsheet that I am pasting a link in the chat right now. Okay. And so for my folks that are on tonight, if you'll click that link for me, it should take you to a spreadsheet that looks like, and I'm just going to drag this over. It looks like this. So what I would like for us to do is pick a box. Doesn't matter. Wherever you want to start typing. Um, However you think you might connect your PBL, I'm sorry, however you might make sure that your PBL is content focused. If the answer is, I will use the observation tool, or I will have another teacher from my content area take a look at my lesson plan. Whatever your strategy is, if you want to type it on this spreadsheet, then this is a way that we can create a shared file and just to gather all of our thoughts. And so you don't have to put your name on this. If you want to, that's great, but there is zero pressure to identify yourself. This is just meant for us as Tennessee teachers to share our thoughts, to share our ideas. Because we are on a virtual call, that can be kind of difficult because we're looking at each other's screens instead of being face to face at a table. So, what I'll do is I will pause for a moment and I will let you have your thoughts here. Now, this says 21st century skills. I'm sorry, I should have drawn attention to that. There is a tab at the bottom, content focused, relevant 21st century skills. So right now we are on the content focused section. And so I'll give you 3 minutes. Think about how you might connect your PBL or how you might make sure your PBL is content focused. And then you can type it in that spreadsheet and we'll go from there. If you are watching this video after the live call, then this link will be included in the follow-up email at the end of the call tonight. So you're watching this, say August 22nd. I've gotten to this part of the video. Go back to the email. That's where you'll find the link to this spreadsheet so you can see what others have said and you can add your information in there as well. So 2 minutes left and then we will continue. Okay. And one final note about content focused when we're talking about planning PBLs. I've mentioned this before, previous workshops. Someone out there is keeping a tally of how many times I say previous workshops. I know. Um, when we did the exercise of which PBL component you feel most comfortable with, content focused was one of the more popular answers amongst teachers. And we understand you are the content experts of the classes that you teach, so it makes sense. So when you think about planning a PBL and keeping it content focused, you might find that this is one of your stronger areas, and that's fantastic. If you are a new teacher, be it you've recently graduated or you've recently come into education from industry, and maybe that specific content doesn't exactly align with your experience, then content focused might be an area that you do struggle with a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that that's an area that you might need to spend a little bit more time on. So, as we go through these, as we move through the fall with these virtual calls, identifying which PBL component you find to be your strength and which one you find to be the one that you need to maybe work on a little bit more, that's going to be an important part of this as well. If you get stuck in an area and you're thinking, man, I really shouldn't be stuck here, then go to that spreadsheet, see what someone else is saying, reach out to someone else that has been at one of the workshops, email me, ask me the question. That's the point of creating this network here. All right, we are ready to move on to keeping PBLs relevant. So, when we talk about keeping PBLs relevant, some key points. One, if it's relevant, it's going to make sure that it connects the learning to the student's interests and their lives. Why are we doing this? What's the goal? Why are we doing this in class today? If you can connect it to what the students are interested in, or you can connect it to their lives, be it their work, be it their future goals, their future career, future school, whatever it looks like, if you can make that connection for them, they're going to be more invested in the PBL, which brings us to it's going to encourage them to stay motivated and engaged in the lesson. Uh, Sometimes we hear the phrase, I can't get my kids to do anything, or these kids don't want to learn. So there's the challenge. PBLs can help you answer that. Um, if you make sure that your PBL is meaningful for the student, then it's going to allow them to have some personal investment. So if they can see that there is a goal or some type of achievement at the end of this PBL, they're going to be more invested. And when I say goal or I say achievement, you'll see in just a moment that I'm talking about those industry credentials. So some students, if we're getting the passing grade, then that's just enough. So maybe the grade isn't their motivation. So maybe something along the lines of, hey, during this PBL, you're going to earn this industry credential. And that is going to be something that gets you a job much earlier as soon as you graduate high school or as soon as you get entered into the work-based learning program. This industry credential opens up all these opportunities for you. That's motivating for a student that wants to go to work that maybe isn't in on earning straight A's as much as another student. So finding out what makes those students motivated, what gets them engaged, can help create that personal investment. And as I said just a second ago, that relevant component, it helps answer the student's question, well, what's in it for me? I'm a good student. I'm here. I'm doing this work because you're my teacher and you've said that I need to do this. Why am I doing this? What am I gaining from this? So going back, industry credentials, if it's something that motivates that student, fantastic. Find out what those motivators are. I was at a workshop once and they referred to it as their currency. What is your student's currency? So money drives certain markets, emotions drive other markets, but that emotion or that need that the student has is the currency for that student. So figuring out what that is can really help your students stay engaged during these PBLs. So where would we find opportunities to keep PBLs relevant for students? First one is going to be in that driving question. So we had a short component during the CTE Institute in July on driving questions and how to build driving questions. So we certainly are going to address that more as we move through some of these workshops. We've also addressed it at the other workshops that we've held, but the driving question is the main statement of what you as the student are going to be doing during the PBL. So that driving question is going to make a career connection. It's going to have the outcome listed in there, and it's going to be one of the motivators for your students, going to tell them exactly what they are doing. And I'm giving an example of a driving question right now. We as structural engineers have been tasked by the city council to design a bridge that can span the gap of a newly created or a newly man-made created creek. So, whatever class you're in, that driving question may or may not fit to your program of study. But what you hopefully heard in there was that there was a clear task. We're designing a bridge to cover a span of a gap. And then you heard that career connection. So now it's going to tell the students this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to act like structural engineers. Well, what even is a structural engineer? So now someone's thinking, well, structural engineer is not going to design bridges. Well, we're going to find the career connection that does, or we're going to let our students discover what that career is. So it's going to help create that research component. It's going to help create a little bit of curiosity with the students or I'm sorry, by using that driving question. Another place where we can intentionally find a way to make it relevant for our students is with that culminating event. Is there a competition, CTSO event? Is there something that the students are going to be building? Is there a presentation that's going to be involved? We've made sure that we've said it several times, and I'll say it again. There does not have to be a physical build for a PBL. It can be spoken word. It can be a digital presentation. It can be a digital design. It can be a research paper. There are so many different methods for you to have that culminating piece for PBL. The physical builds are great, but it doesn't have to be that physical build. Um, I'll be careful when I say this next statement. If you Google STEM projects or if you Google PBL projects, you might find that most of the results show you how to build something. Be careful of that. Don't feel like you have to build something for a PBL. It can be other forms of that product. The hook, the CTSO competition I just mentioned, that introductory activity, how are you going to keep your students interested is one thing, but how are you going to get them interested initially? That's a completely different ball game. What are you going to do to get those students motivated on day one? Are you going to have an industry or a community partner come in and introduce the project? Are you going to show them a date for a CTSO competition that the top performing students are going to get to go to and represent the school? What's going to be that thing that you use to introduce your PBL that gets your students excited from the very beginning? Is it an empty plot of land and you say, we're going to build a mini house here? The school needs a new shed. They've asked us to build it. We're putting it right here. This land plot is empty. Ready, set, go with some parameters, of course. But how are you gonna spark that interest? All right, on the second page here, but this is page 3 of the template here. So you see that we've got a lot of these highlighted, and that's because one of the goals of PBLs is making sure that it is relevant to the student. So it makes sense that there's a lot of areas where you would find that. So the career connection, You saw it in the content focused as well, but here it is again, making sure that the students understand what career aligns with this PBL is going to help them understand why it's relevant to them. CTSO connections, the with the competitions, that capstone presentation that we mentioned a moment ago, and then that industry credential. If I am interested in going to work and I know that I'm going to need some type of credential to get to that job or to climb the ladder at that job as I do enter the workforce, then what industry credential do I need? How do I get it? If it's connected to the PBL, fantastic. Someone has once asked the question, well, are we expected for our students to earn an industry credential during these PBLs? No. What we would like you to do is find an opportunity to introduce that industry credential, showing them a list. Here are the industry credentials that align with this PBL. If you're interested in one of these industry credentials, then maybe you can have that student, maybe you can have a one-on-one discussion. Here's how you can earn this industry credential outside of this time. Or maybe there's an opportunity for you to build in some class time for that student to earn that industry credential. We've seen some teachers that have planned an industry credential throughout the PBL, meaning they focus on certain areas of the PBL during certain times of class, and then they've set aside a 20-minute period for their students to do some online learning toward an industry credential. We've seen some teachers that make it completely separate. They do a PBL during a certain time, and once that PBL is completed, they have their students do an industry credential. If it's an online learning course or if it's an in-person learning course, either way, whatever makes sense for your school, however that opportunity best suits you. All right. So, same format as we did for the content focused. And again, that link is in the chat. So, I'll give you 3 minutes here of no talking from me. How will you make sure that your PBLs are relevant? And if you would, I'd like you to share that in the spreadsheet. All right, my final comment for keeping PBLs relevant is we've talked about the different areas of the state. We have so many different things happening in our schools that what's relevant to one set of students may certainly not be relevant to another. And we totally understand that. So, a key is you knowing your students best and then trying to find out what their currency is, what makes those students get motivated, what are their interests. And so that definitely takes some relationship building on your end. And that's why teachers are so great, because that's one of the things that we are so good at is building those relationships with students. So figuring out what that motivator is going to be a key for your PBLs as you continue to build them. You might find that, I thought this was going to be really relevant for my students, and it turned out it just wasn't. That's okay. That was good practice. Next time you do this PBL with a different set of students, change something up, give a different approach. All right. The third and the last component for this evening is 21st century skills. So we hear this term a lot. And there are several different 21st century skills. You'll see the ones that are listed in the template in that gray box there. And so those are the ones that we've called the most attention to for this purpose. But it is critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. Sometimes you hear it referred to as the four C's. So at the beginning of the call when I said finding opportunities for these things to happen, I don't know if it's realistic for us to say, okay, now students, you are going to critically think about this part of the PBL. I'm not necessarily saying it happens that way. What I'm saying is there's opportunities for your students to critically think about what they are doing. There are opportunities for them to collaborate, to work together through certain parts of the PBL. There are opportunities for them to be creative, especially on one of other components, leaving it open-ended. Um, and then that communication aspect. So what you'll find is that these 21st century skills promote functional skills for life and the workforce, which also promotes persistence, resilience, perseverance, all of those things that we know are extremely important for students, especially as they continue to mature in school and they start to enter their workforce. We have students that are entering the work-based learning programs very early. And so we want to make sure that the first time that they experience some type of stress, we want to make sure that they've had a chance to practice that. Um, I tell my own children, we practice stressful environments. That way, when they get into a stressful situation and their parents aren't there or someone's not there to guide them through it, they know how to think through that situation without reacting what might seem as an irrational emotion coming out. So, those 21st century skills can help all of those things. Um, Working together in a group and then splitting apart to do some individual activities. That is a very real thing that happens in the workforce in so many different industries. So just building in those opportunities. It does not mean that the PBL has to happen in a group the entire time. No, go back to your daily activities. There's a great space for you to allow your students to work individually. Then let them come back together, talk about what they did, and then go from there. So a lot of different places where you can give the opportunities for these 21st century skills throughout the PBL. Again, just highlighting some of the pieces of the template where you'll definitely find opportunities for those 21st century skills. Yes, the one that's labeled 21st century skills. Um, I don't know if I've seen many PBL templates where all of these weren't circled. Most of the time, I think I see those green or those black circles around all four of these things. And I think that's great. I love it that teachers are thinking that way. Well, there's an opportunity for every single one of these in here. And so I like that a lot. Culminating event. And when I highlighted this, I'm thinking that presentation style, that discussion style is definitely a chance for those students to work together on not only just creating that, but then communicating that to their peers, to stakeholders, whomever's in the room for the presentation to be communicated. Definitely an opportunity for them to be creative when they create that final product, that final presentation, whatever it is. And yeah, they certainly have to think very critically, how are they going to present this information? We see a lot of Shark Tank examples, and they're fantastic. Yeah, you've got to be ready for those questions. And when those questions are asked, well, what are you going to do if this happens? Boom, you've got to think on your feet right there. And if you haven't thought through that part of the process, then that could be a point of tension for you during the presentation, especially if you don't have an answer. So that event piece definitely allows for all of those skills to be addressed. The daily activities, I mentioned this just a moment ago, allowing your students to work individually and then coming back together as a group gives them some time to reflect. It gives them some time to give their teammates feedback. So that communication piece is 100% connected there. Again, you see some of the same things highlighted here, but I did highlight the technology integration here. So when we think about the skills that students are going to need, and we think about communication and we think about collaboration, just like we're doing tonight, being able to effectively operate a Zoom call, being able to effectively join a Zoom call and understanding how that technology component works, being able to effectively communicate via some other method of communication than spoken word, one person in front of another. So thinking about how you can connect that technology piece into this component. CTSOs, that is highlighted because I know they have a ton of oral competitions, presentations. They are just fantastic. I can't say enough good things about the CTSO competitions. And then that capstone presentation connects back to the things that you saw on the second page of the template just a moment ago. How your student's going to present the information definitely gives them an opportunity to work together and to communicate. So just having those highlighted there in there are several other places where the 21st century skills can be connected, but again, just highlighting some of those key points where we know that they are. All right, you guessed it. So now, on that spreadsheet, you'll see that third tab. It says it says 21st century skills. So again, I'll go 3 minutes here. I won't say anything, and then I'll bring us back together to wrap it up for the night. All right, and for the future viewers, I'll just make a note again that if you're at this part of the recording, you're watching this and you're wondering how do I get to the spreadsheet, go back to the email that I've sent, and the link for the PBL component discussion will be in the email. And hopefully, that 3 minutes there gives you enough time to get there. I mean, you could probably pause the video anyhow, but that's where it is. It's in that email that you've got. Okay. All right. So I do want to make sure that I pause and give enough time for some questions, especially to our folks that are with us live tonight. So I'm going to do that in just a moment. But for the purpose of the recording, I'm going to go ahead to the final couple slides here just to bring attention to the next call. It is going to be next week. We are going to discuss PBL components open-ended, student-created product, and how PBLs are student-led. So that will be August 26th. Um, September 23rd, we're going to take a closer look at the engineering design notebooks and the portfolios that we've mentioned. And then on October 14th, if you have a question or if you have something specific you'd like me to address over one of these calls, let me know. We will build it in to that schedule, and then we can have an open discussion about anything that you are curious about as we move through the integration process here. I will make a note, or I will make a point to say that we are not expected to be professionals, or I'm sorry, professional PBO builders at the end of the year. That's not the goal. The goal is that we are working to incorporate PBLs within our content areas, within our programs of study. So, if you don't feel like an expert PBL builder, that's fine. We're all practicing this together, and that's why this community exists here. If you're curious, where can I reach out to get some more support for this? Or if I want to find out more about some of the events that maybe TSIN is hosting, this is definitely a place that you can go to. Each one of the stars on the map there represents a STEM hub. Um, and they have been strategically placed throughout the state to where it's not too far of a drive for some folks if they want to go in person to some of those events that they have. So they have things like professional development. They have a lot of meetings. Some of them are virtual, some of them are in person. They have these great things called lending libraries. If you just don't have the resources at your school and you're thinking, well, I want to do this thing, but I don't have the stuff to do it, ask your local STEM hub, and they have a system where they can actually lend you some of the things that you might need for completing your PBLs. It's great. They have a lot of opportunities for students too, and they all just do a fantastic job. Um, if you are interested in the statewide design challenge, this is a, PBL package that we put together every year. It's very much a competition if you want it to be a competition. If you just want to use this as a classroom resource, then use this as a classroom resource. Uh, I would love for you to compete with this. I really, really would. But if you just don't feel comfortable competing this year, no big deal. Just scan that QR code. It takes you to a form that you fill out, and then I send you the digital information packet, which actually just came out last week. So very excited to have that going. All right. If you are with us live, you will get a certificate of attendance. If you're watching this as a recording, then you won't get that certificate. But any of my live folks tonight, I'll make sure that I get your information recorded, and then we will get you that certificate sent out. That's my email. That's my cell phone number. If you need me, if you have a question and you want to ask, that takes you directly to me. That's the same one that my wife calls me on. So what I would ask is if you can text me first, say, "Hey Ben, this is Steve. I'm with this school. Here's my question." That does a lot for me. One, it tells me who you are, and then I'm not answering a spam call. But two, it gives me time to look up the answer to your question without saying, "Well, let me find out for you and I'll get back to you." I see that text message, I can get the answer, and then I can either text you back, email you back, or I can call you back, hopefully with an answer that helps you out. Okay, so